You can conduct a 16-hour fast on paper while your body silently dismantles the precise repair mechanism you think you're safeguarding. Sip black coffee every morning and feel alert and totally in control. Not because coffee is unhealthy, nor because fasting is ineffective, but rather because of a biological timing collision that is rarely discussed in the popular wellness community. From the moment you wake up, the mechanism runs through each cup you pour. I'll walk you through each step of the process, and when I'm done, I'll give you what I call the clear protocol, which consists of 3 precise changes to your morning routine that will cost you nothing and take you less than 90 minutes in total. By the time I explain those 3 adjustments, you will have witnessed your body healing from the damage in real time. Let me begin with what is already happening before the coffee reaches your lips. Your alarm goes off, you open your eyes, and before you reach for your phone or even turn on the coffee maker, and your adrenal glands have already sent a chemical signal cortisol through your bloodstream. This is not the stress cortisol that is discussed in articles about burnout. Rather, it is a completely different biological event known as the cortisol awakening response. Before the coffee reaches your lips, let me begin with what is already taking place. Your alarm sounds. Your adrenal glands have already transmitted a chemical signal through your circulation before you open your eyes, reach for your phone, or even turn on the coffee maker. Cortisol is that signal. The liver generates glucose in the same manner as an early morning manufacturing shift in a factory. We refer to this process as gluconeogenesis. It is your body's natural way of providing energy for the first few hours of the day without requiring you to consume any calories. This is why it's important for your fast. Your bloodstream is exposed to that synthetic glucose, blood sugar levels increase. Additionally, the pancreas releases insulin to control blood glucose when it rises, even little. The hormone that transports glucose into cells is called insulin. However, insulin also performs another function that is hardly ever discussed in content related to fasting. It shuts down a cellular maintenance process called autophagy. That part is true. And the mainstream fasting conversation has treated the insulin index of a food as the only mechanism that matters. That framing is incomplete in a way that actively costs you results. Caffeine is a pharmacologically active compound. It is not a food. The cortisol spike that was going to peak naturally at a certain level now climbs higher. A higher cortisol spike means a more aggressive gluconeogenesis response. The liver produces more glucose enters the blood, more insulin follows, and the cleaning crew, which was already under pressure from the natural morning cortisol rhythm, receives an early eviction notice 2 to 3 hours before your eating window was supposed to open. Here is the full mechanism in sequence. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors. Adenosine is the chemical that accumulates in your brain during waking hours and builds sleep pressure. It is the reason you feel progressively more tired as the day progresses. After a full night of sleep, adenosine is at its highest concentration. The cortisol awakening response is partly designed to manage this adenosine load, clearing it through natural metabolic pathways over the first 1 to 2 hours of the morning. When you flood those adenosine receptors with caffeine at the precise moment the cortisol system is trying to do that work, you create a forced stimulation that overshoots the system's natural trajectory. The cortisol does not peak and decline in its normal arc. It climbs higher and remains elevated longer. Your blood glucose rise from cortisol, and caffeine is not sufficient to cause any perceivable sensation. You feel sharp, focused, under control. The caffeine is doing its neurological job perfectly. Your metabolism is running a different program entirely. We have been told for years that black coffee is fast safe. The mainstream nutrition community largely still repeats this. The logic is calorie-based, and I understand why. For decades, fasting research centered almost entirely on caloric restriction. If a substance contained no meaningful calories, it was classified as metabolically inert, and the conversation stopped there. Here is what that framing misses. Autophagy is not regulated by calories. It is regulated by insulin and by a pathway called mTOR, mechanistic target of rapamycin, which is the body's master switch for deciding whether cells should grow and build or slow down and repair. Think of mTOR as the warehouse manager. When the manager receives word that a shipment is incoming, when blood glucose rises, when insulin enters the picture, he calls in the full work crew, clears the loading dock, and suspends the inventory audit. It does not matter if the shipment is large or small. The signal that a delivery is coming is enough to end the cleaning operation, and cortisol-driven gluconeogenesis creates exactly that signal every morning, independent of whether you ate anything. Yoshinori Ohsumi won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2016, specifically for mapping how autophagy is controlled at the molecular level. His work showed that autophagy is exquisitely sensitive to cellular signaling. The presence of insulin and the activation of mTOR are among the most potent autophagy suppressors the body operates. This research received the highest scientific honor in medicine 9 years ago. And yet the dominant conversation in intermittent fasting communities still centers almost entirely on calories and feeding windows. The mechanism, the one that makes fasting biologically distinct from dieting, gets a paragraph if you are lucky. The practical consequence of this knowledge gap is measurable. Millions of people are running 16-hour and 18-hour fasts, avoiding every calorie until noon, while spending the first 2-3 hours of that window in an insulin and cortisol environment that is, biologically speaking, closer to the fed state than the fasted state, extending 2 to 3 hours into what was supposed to be a protected fast. There is a secondary mechanism running alongside the cortisol pathway, and it explains something many fasting practitioners notice but cannot explain. Over the next 2-3 hours, as caffeine is metabolized and its half-life begins working against you, those blocked receptors open back up, and all the adenosine that accumulated while the blockade was in place floods them simultaneously. This is the mechanism behind the mid-morning crash. Not low blood sugar, not genuine hunger, but a retroactive adenosine wave hitting all at once. The reason this matters for fasting is what that crash triggers behaviorally. The sudden drop in perceived energy and focus is interpreted by the reward-seeking circuitry of the brain as a need for fuel. You reach for food, or for another coffee, or for something with sugar. Not because your body needs caloric inputs, but because your adenosine system has been destabilized by the timing of the first caffeine dose. The hunger at 10:30 is largely a pharmacological artifact of the 645 cup. The fast becomes harder to hold, not because of insufficient willpower, but because the neurochemical apparatus that generates appetite has been primed to fire early. Now I want to address what most people add to their coffee. Because the black coffee question, while genuinely important, is not where the majority of fasting practitioners are actually operating. Adding cream half and half or any form of milk introduces two mechanisms that break a fast directly and without ambiguity. Dairy contains lactose, which is a sugar that provokes an insulin response. But more significantly, dairy contains amino acids, including leucine. Leucine is among the most potent known activators of mTOR. Even trace amounts of leucine are sufficient to trigger mTOR activation. A single tablespoon of cream contains enough leucine to push the mTOR pathway toward activation. The cleaning crew does not gradually wind down, it stops. If your goal from fasting is primarily caloric restriction and appetite management, bulletproof coffee may serve a behavioral purpose for you. I am not dismissing that. I am telling you that from an autophagy standpoint, which is the mechanism that makes extended fasting something genuinely different from an elaborate dietary pattern, anything you add to coffee that contains protein, fat, or sugar is ending the cleaning crew's shift early. Here is what your body is supposed to do during a properly executed fast, and the contrast with what actually happens under poor timing is stark enough to change how you think about the entire protocol. In the first 12 hours after your last meal, your body transitions from the fed state to the early fasted state. Liver glycogen stores deplete progressively. Insulin levels elevated around your last meal fall toward a low baseline. As insulin falls, the suppression on autophagy begins to release. The cleaning crew does not arrive all at once. They trickle in as the loading dock quiets and delivery activity slows. The transition is a gradient, not a switch. Between hours 12 and 16, assuming insulin has remained genuinely low, autophagy activity becomes measurably elevated. Researchers examining autophagy markers in white blood cells of fasting subjects have found meaningful increases after 16 hours of metabolically clean fasting. Fasting characterized by truly low insulin, not simply caloric restriction. Between hours 16 and 24, autophagy continues intensifying. The cleaning crew is operating at full capacity across multiple tissue types, including brain tissue, cardiovascular tissue, and metabolically active muscle. This is the window where fasting stops being about weight and starts being about cellular architecture. Now overlay the coffee problem onto that timeline. Your fast begins at 8 in the evening. By 6 in the morning, you are at 10 hours. You pour your first cup. The cortisol that was already rising gets amplified. Gluconeogenesis accelerates. By 6:45, insulin has raised enough to push mTOR back toward active suppression of autophagy. You have biologically generated somewhere between 8 and 10 hours of meaningful autophagy activity, instead of the 14 or 15 hours you were capable of producing. There is a layer to this story that goes even deeper than the cortisol pathway. And it involves the circadian biology that earned 3 American scientists, Jeffrey Hall, Michael Rosebush, and Michael Young, the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2017. 2 consecutive Nobel Prizes in physiology connected to the same fundamental biological system. That should indicate to you how structurally important this mechanism is. Your body does not experience time as a neutral backdrop. Every organ, every hormone, every cellular signaling pathway runs on a biological clock tied to the light-dark cycle of the Earth. The liver has its own circadian clock, independent of the master clock in the brain's hypothalamus. The pancreas has one. The adrenal glands have one. These clocks regulate the sensitivity of every system to the hormones that pass through them. Cortisol sensitivity at 6 in the morning is not the same as cortisol sensitivity at 2 in the afternoon. Caffeine hits a cortisol system that is already at its daily peak sensitivity, driving a gluconeogenesis pathway that is simultaneously at its daily peak capacity. The timing does not simply add bad effects together, it multiplies them. 30-day daily companion. From this video, the coffee window, the cortisol arc, the structural morning sequence. Because the way you break your fast matters nearly as much as the fast itself. The guide includes 25 breakfast meal ideas with exact protein counts designed to close the fasting window cleanly without generating the mTOR spike that erases the final hours of autophagy you just protected. The entire framework is built on the same Nobel Prize circadian biology I just walked you through. Not a trend, not a 30-day challenge in the motivational sense. A structure, one that takes under 5 minutes a day once you understand why you are doing it. You can find it through the link in the description for less than the cost of a single restaurant meal. The absurdity, honestly, is how hard it is to find this information assembled in one place when the underlying science has been sitting in peer-reviewed journals for nearly a decade. Now let me give you the specific numbers that matter. People over 50 typically show a compressed cortisol awakening response peak. The spike happens faster, and the window is slightly more concentrated, which means the amplification zone where caffeine causes the most damage is narrower but more intense. Getting caffeine into that window at 55 is biochemically different from doing it at 35. The error costs more. The insulin response to cortisol-driven gluconeogenesis varies by metabolic health, but published research on stress-induced glucose responses suggests that a significant cortisol event can raise fasting blood glucose by 10 to 25 milligrams per deciliter in metabolically compromised individuals. Studies measuring insulin dynamics in extended fasting show that even modest insulin elevations well within the normal clinical range are sufficient to suppress autophagy through mTOR activation within 30 to 60 minutes. The suppression is not permanent. Once insulin falls, the pathway reopens and the cleaning crew returns. But the window is real, measurable, and in insulin-resistant individuals substantially longer than most fasting content assumes. An 8 in the morning cup of coffee is still pharmacologically active in your system at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, if you are in the over 50 demographic. The cortisol amplification effect extends further into your day than it did at 30. This has implications not only for fasting and autophagy, but for afternoon cortisol levels, sleep quality, and the hormonal baseline you carry into the following morning's cortisol awakening response. A poor cortisol baseline from the previous day creates a higher amplitude cortisol awakening response the next morning, which makes the timing collision more damaging, which degrades sleep quality further. The loop compounds. The population most affected by all of this is also the population most invested in fasting for metabolic repair. Metabolic flexibility, the body's ability to switch efficiently between glucose and fat as fuel, deteriorates through midlife. In a highly metabolically flexible person, the insulin response to cortisol-driven gluconeogenesis is relatively brief. In someone with declining metabolic flexibility, a category that describes a substantial proportion of adults over 45, that same cortisol signal produces a larger glucose release, a larger insulin response, and a much slower return to genuine fasted baseline. The cleaning crew does not merely take a longer break. It barely gets organized before the next eviction notice arrives. And this is the population for whom the fasting literature most dramatically overestimates the realized autophagy benefit, because most of the fasting studies measuring autophagy markers were conducted in lean, young, metabolically healthy subjects. That population is not watching videos about metabolic health at 45. There is also a compounding factor involving visceral fat, the fat stored inside the abdominal cavity around the organs, distinct from the subcutaneous fat that sits beneath the skin. Visceral fat is metabolically active in a way subcutaneous fat is not. It secretes inflammatory compounds and free fatty acids directly into the portal circulation, which drains directly into the liver. Research on habitual coffee consumption and long-term metabolic health is, on net, positive. Chlorogenic acids, the polyphenolic compounds that give coffee much of its flavor complexity and contribute to its bitter notes, improve insulin sensitivity over time through effects on hepatic glucose metabolism. The epidemiology is consistent across multiple large meta-analyses. Habitual coffee drinkers show meaningfully lower risk of type 2 diabetes than non-coffee drinkers. One pooled analysis, drawing on hundreds of thousands of participants, found that each additional cup of coffee consumed per day was associated with approximately a 6.7% reduction in type 2 diabetes risk. That is a substantial protective signal for a beverage most people drink daily anyway. The paradox is this. The compound that causes the acute cortisol-driven insulin problem in the morning is the same compound that, consumed consistently over months and years, improves the insulin sensitivity that makes that acute problem more manageable. Coffee simultaneously makes the morning timing problem worse in the short term and strengthens the metabolic resilience that buffers it long term. This is exactly the kind of nuance that disappears when health content focuses on a single directional claim. The answer is not stop drinking coffee. The answer, the specific, actionable precision that most wellness content never reaches, is to consume coffee at the right point in your morning hormonal arc to minimize the timing collision and let the polyphenols do their long-term work. And one common mistake that will invalidate all three if you make it. The first component is the cortisol window. No caffeine in the first 90 minutes after waking. Set a timer if you have to, not from when you get out of bed, but from the moment you wake up.